Welcome, welcome. Happy Monday. Life Pro Law. It's not Monday. I'm usually here Mondays. Happy Tuesday. We're doing a special Tuesday edition of Debbie rambling on camera for Life Pro because today is World IBS Day. I'm always in tune with the medical conditions and all this spectrum of symptoms that everybody's dealing with. And there's so many tools in Life Pro's arsenal that can help you live a better quality of life. There's so many things from just self-care and feeling better tools to exercise and changing your physique and getting stronger and building bones. So everybody's starting in a different place, but when you are dealing with conditions like IBS and whatever, some of you are dealing with other conditions as well. Sometimes you got to change your game or your approach to how you get active, how you play, those types of things. So if you are joining me today, please let me know where you are from. I am in Canada, about an hour north of Calgary, Alberta, for those of you who do not know me. I specialize in vibration machine training and have for 15 years. So today we're going to do a very short routine, some of the things that I've done in the past with my clients in the studio for their IBS. And we're going to do a little bit of awareness because it's all about sharing these conditions. Sometimes you're dealing with these things and maybe you're going to associate with some of these symptoms that Debbie's talking about and realize, hey, maybe I have that. Hello, Jess from Buffalo. Yes, this is very frustrating having IBS. See, there are people out there for real. The one stat I didn't look into, and I'll maybe challenge my beautiful girl behind the backgrounds, Lauren. I do not know how many people are dealing with IBS in the US. That's usually one of the things that I look up. But IBS presents itself. Everything's a label. Hello, Miss Kim. You too. Yes, Kim's one of our co-condition queens. If there was a T-shirt where you printed all the conditions on the back of it, we'd have to make it a dress for Kim just to include all the conditions and the symptoms. But as you know, whether it's IBS that you're dealing with or something else, that is simply a label. And I'm all about the symptoms associated with that label. A lot of times, you might have a condition with these symptoms, but these symptoms are the same for another condition, diabetes or things. So tune in on the conditions, or the conditions less and the symptoms more, because that's what varies for everybody. Some of the common symptoms with IBS is just a general discomfort or extreme pain. There's severity scales in that abdominal area. Your tummy just doesn't feel good. Could be tight, could be hard, could be bloated, could be, it feels different to everybody, and how we describe it feels different to everybody. I have Lauren behind the scenes posting some science, as I always like to do. There's a number of things you can do for your IBS to manage these symptoms, and I'm all about non-invasive. So, that abdominal pain, it may be cramps, it could be excess gas, you might be constipated, you might have diarrhea, you might have both. And symptoms come and go. Sometimes they stick around, sometimes you don't have them. And, another big one is, it's a big word, but I'm bringing it up, fecal incontinence. Everybody talks about urinary incontinence and the ability to not hold or have leakage in the pee, but it happens in the poop too. So, sometimes muscles are deconditioned, sometimes they're overconditioned, sometimes you don't feel it. So, suffer from cramping, sudden diarrhea. And it isn't, sometimes you can track the heck out of things and be diligent with your food choices, but there's so many influences in our world that we're not in control of. And what I'm kind of leaning towards is triggers. Triggers are things, if you're in tune with your body and you have a diagnosis and you've been managing a condition for a period of time, you tend to know what your triggers are. Stress, food, too much exercise, not enough. Their lack of sleep. The triggers are different, and what triggers do is they spark these symptoms, or they increase the severity of the symptoms. If you're not aware and you're looking at Debbie thinking, well, I don't know what my triggers are, this is something you need to start paying attention to. Your body is always talking to you and giving you clues. So if you ate a Reuben sandwich last night with extra sauerkraut, and you had a bad day, I'm not saying don't eat the Reuben, but maybe a little less sauerkraut, or try no sauerkraut. Food intolerances tends to be a big contributor to that whole gut health, IBS, And then there's lots of other conditions where food intolerances contribute to that. So understanding what you're putting into your body and whether it's processing well, it could be something wrong with the biome. So food intolerance is a big one. It's generally one we can be in control of. It just takes some time to learn and educate ourselves. And you can't really unlearn something. So once you dig into something and give it a try, and triggers change. So as we get older, maybe you could eat sauerkraut all the time, and now all of a sudden it's giving you grief. Sometimes due to hormonal changes, medications we've taken, the symptoms change too. So, all things that, if you're not a journal taker, just, start making mental notes. But there's generally triggers associated with IBS. And if you know what they are, you know what to avoid. And some of that should come into play too when we get to the activity piece. So yes, know your triggers. IBS itself, there's kind of 3 sub labels. You know how I feel about labels. Crohn's is a very common term. Most people have heard, or if you know someone with Crohn's, I know the first person in my province that was diagnosed with Crohn's, and she's well into her 80s now, and I can absolutely tell you it's food triggers. She's been a client of mine for 14 years actually, and anytime that she's had an issue with it's been eating the wrong food. And sometimes we'd like to have those indulgences, but you got to keep in mind, I wouldn't do it while you're on holidays and living in a hotel guest bathroom. So Crohn's is a very common one. Ulcerative colitis, I probably said that wrong, and indeterminate colitis. So there's 3 kind of subcategories within that. You may have a diagnosis, but the bigger umbrella is irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, and there's something wrong with that gut biome. There's lots of research and studies out there talking about that specifically. So if you don't have a diagnosis, but some of the symptoms we're talking about today resonate with you, maybe some of this stuff just might work for you at home. So we're going to go through a few routines on the vibration machine. Interestingly enough, I had my girl Lauren drop another link, exercise, which is what we're going to go through today, and we're going to get to the machine to do that. Exercise is a very good way to manage the symptoms of IBS. Obviously, moving in any way, shape, or form. When you move, lymph moves. You're gonna hear me say that at nausea in all my sessions. But your lymphatic systems, extra circulation, oxygenation of the blood, all these things aid in digestion. And kind of like yesterday, if you joined me for my session about our post-Easter workout, one of the big things I talked about is how aggressively you should exercise if you have had a big meal, or if you in this case, it may not be an overeating situation, but you're feeling kind of bloated, you're crampy. The less you do, the worse you're going to feel, but it's hard to go for a big jog or a class at the gym when you feel like crap. So I wanted to show you a few things that you could do on your machine anytime that you need to manage symptoms. If you are dealing with IBS and you exercise now, you probably know the benefits of getting moving and being active to manage those symptoms. But on those bad days, if you do have a plate at home, there's ways that you can use this just as a spot treatment to manage those tools, or you can use it to incorporate to your existing activities as a warm-up for the preventative piece. If exercise is one of your triggers and it's something that's been causing you issue, I would say it's probably intensity that you need to maybe pay attention, or duration. A lot of times, if you've developed a condition or you have gut issues, you're pissed off. You want to get back to the gym. You want to do your own thing, and you go with the same veracity that you may have left. Well, you might be dealing with something new or an imbalance. So moderate, short durations. See how your body customizes to the activity. Sometimes pushing yourself too far, too fast can contribute to your symptoms versus resolve them. So normally I'm standing on the machine doing a warm-up. Today I thought I'd do things a little bit differently. And we're going to start on our knees. But I want you to put a mat on the machine. So if you have your mat that comes with the machine, or you have a yoga mat or a cushion, just something, because we're going to be on our knees. And the reason we're going to be on our knees is I want the pivot of your body a little bit closer to the action, because we're trying to target this in a specific way. So when you're on your knees, you don't need to be going the mid to high speeds that I suggest when we are standing. We don't have the knees as part of the equation, so the hips are taking the majority of the movement, which is what we want. But I suggest, probably a mid-speed, slightly under that. I'm going to be at the 25, 30 range, I would suggest. My machine goes 60. We are in oscillating. And all we're going to do is get on our knees. We're going to kind of balance our weight on our shins, and our feet are hanging off the back side of the plate. And you'll feel, it feels good. If you have no knee issues, if you do have knee issues, this shouldn't bother you if you're matted up. If you're finding it scary and uncomfortable, just like when you're standing, bring your feet close or your knees closer to the center to reduce the intensity. If you want a little more action, go hip width apart, but do not go wider than hip width apart. We're not doing wide squats or something. You do not need to. So while you're here, I just want you moving. You know, maybe we're bending over slightly at the torso. It's kind of hard to do a pelvic tilt unless you've got a little bit of flexibility. Maybe do some hulas. Just get some movement going in this area. You could do some twists, some torso twists. Okay. So this is essentially how we would massage our calves, but by being in an upright position, you're just going to feel it a little bit differently here than you would have standing. Just some variety. Okay, so maybe a minute, maybe two, you might feel comfortable. Maybe your symptoms have subsided and that's enough for you. This is just an example I wanted to show you today. So some, like I say, some movements, some torso twists, a minute, two max, and you might find as a spot treatment alone, you're good to go. That might be all that you need. For those of you that want a little bit more variety, I have 3 more variations that I wanted to show you today. Sensitivity varies for everybody, so whether you want a mat on the machine for these next positions is entirely up to you. Anytime your elbows or your knees are on the machine, I suggest a mat. I don't know the surface of your machine. I don't know your tolerance, but everybody has a tendency to go really wide because we think it's what we're supposed to do. And I don't want you rubbing any skin or bruising yourself unnecessarily because it's just not comfortable. So knees or elbows, I want, see, and just sitting here. No offense, I have a little bit of my lunch moving. So I'm digesting. It's aiding in my digestion. So everybody knows what a cat-cow is from yoga. You can do this one of 2 ways. If you got a little bit of neck tension, shoulder tension, I've shown you how to do, you're basically in a modified push-up. We're on all fours. Today, specific for tummy issues, we're going to turn this one around. And because I'm putting my knees on the machine, I've got a mat. So we're going to go like this now. I probably should have started this way. It would have had better flow. So we just finished in this position. Now we're going to lean over and we're going to put our hands on the floor. And what you're going to feel when you're on the machine this way, your hips are kind of moving side to side. But as soon as you bend at the hips, and you get into this position, your hips are kind of moving in a different direction. So it's what I encourage you to do, maybe I like this, maybe you like that. Experiment and see which variation feels best and works best for you. I just want to give you the visuals. So again, knees are no more than hip width apart. If you're finding it too intense, bring your knees a little bit closer to the center. Hold good posture, but be relaxed. Don't resist and tense up in the upper body. And all I want you to do is tilt the bum forward, arch up like a cat, hold for 2-3 seconds, keep moving. Opposite. So we're tilting our bum and our head to the ceiling, making a U shape. I don't know if you can see that with my baggy shirt today, and just do, 3, 4, 5 reps, whatever feels good. So this is variation number 2. You may want to do both of them, okay? Next variation is a little bit more of a stretch. We're going to stay in this position. I'm going to push my mat out a little bit because I like my cushion. And we're going to just come out a little further. You're going to feel it, as you play with your angle and how you position yourself, you're going to feel it in different areas of the torso. So this I feel a little bit more up into the rib cage, just underneath the lungs. This I feel more in the lower tummy. Okay, so kind of play with, you know where your pain is. And the more you play with your angles and where you are, the more you, and once you sort of get to that spot where you feel you want it, just hold still and relax. You don't even have to move around. Again, just variations I want to show you guys. Okay, and once you get down here, kind of moving around, it feels natural. Just go with what your body leads you. If it doesn't feel good, don't do it. If it feels good, stick with it. Okay, so that's option number 2, or number 3, actually. And then for the last variation, mats are optional. I have enough yoga mats built in, so I'm going to ditch my mat. And I'm going to bring the machine back a little bit. I'm going to sit down on the machine, and I always like to have the controls between my legs, because yeah, you always want to go a little longer. Sometimes you want to play with the speeds. When I'm going to sit on the machine next, and for this, I prefer a mid to high speed. So what I would do for this last position, if you wanted to experiment with this one, because this is more of a direct massage position. When you're on your knees, it's more of it's moving you structurally differently. So I like to crank this up for me personally at a mid to high speed range. If it's uncomfortable on the neck and the shoulders, just lean forward slightly. Okay, and all we're going to do is I just want you twisting. Just sort of like when we were standing on the machine, you can just get a little bit of movement. Or when we were on our knees, you could do some seated cat-cow, just twisting that spine forward and backward. I just want you sort of playing, get it to the area that you feel your discomfort that you want to address, and then you just relax. Focus on breathing. Okay, you could do this on its own a minute or two. Any of these positions can be a singular standalone spot treatment. If you want to throw them together to be a routine, one of the big things that I will preach is, if you improve your symptoms and you're moving and you're feeling better, don't stop doing the stuff that made you feel better. A lot of times, the symptoms go away and we get back into routine and we stop using what the self-care tools were that helped us, and then symptoms return. So you might want to ramp things up a little bit if symptoms have gotten intense, but certainly if things have resolved and have improved, and they will, make sure that you're doing some, at the very least, as a maintenance piece, add it onto your existing routine. Or if you're getting into the realm of those triggers, that things are going to set you off, or you're going to go for a big meal, or you're going to go for a little bit more of a walk than normally you do. Use this as a pre or post activity thing to help be preventative with the symptoms. If you have overeaten or the food sensitivities are ramped up and you're having symptoms, just to aid in digestion. So it's not always a big workout. Again, a lot of this can just be self-care made simple. I keep saying that lately. It's like a new slogan. But, the simpler it is, the quicker it is, the more I find that you guys are going to stick with this. And for me, it's the consistency. If you stick with it consistently, that's when you start having the really long-term benefits and start improving. If you're just going to use it as a tool to treat your symptoms, that's great. You're going to have relief, but you're going to get into this vicious cycle. Symptoms return, do Debbie's routine, things are fixed, okay, live life. So, instead of being on that hamster wheel, invest 2 to 3 minutes a day if you're dealing with this condition, with whatever you have found success, and stick with it and just build it into your self-care. It'll become second nature, okay? I have some clients, the gal I was mentioning earlier, the only break she ever took from using her vibration plate in like 13, 14 years, she went home to Scotland to see some family while she was still able to travel a few years ago. She was gone 6 weeks, and when she got back, literally I picked her up at the airplane and we went straight to emergency because she was just, it was the worst plane ride back ever. But she took a 6-week break from her machine and her food and her bed and her environment. So there's many things that maybe you are aware of your triggers, but sometimes if you're traveling or you're doing new things, we don't always associate, oh yeah, this is out of my routine and my body's talking back. So pay attention to what your body's telling you. If you don't know what your triggers are, start making mental notes. If you do have a big, bad day, what did you do the day before? What did you do earlier that day? Start making some mental notes, and I think you'll start seeing some consistencies. And I'm not saying don't live your life, but if you're going to go out and you're going to live hard and you're going to pay for it, plan your time around it. Do it on a Friday night when, you can redo this session on a Saturday and feel better by Saturday afternoon. So I deal with a lot of chronic conditions, a lot of chronic symptoms, very severe. And again, consistent minute or two here and there when you need it in the long run is the most effective way to not only manage those symptoms and decrease their severity, but start enjoying life and living the other things you should be doing. Okay, so I want to see who else is here. I see there has been some yapping. As I said, if you are dealing with IBS, and you have symptoms or you have questions for me, I am going to get to that point. I had Lauren drop a few things here. Okay, we got Kim for sure from Camel River. We have JE from Buffalo. So there's only one study about IBS and activity. This one study I found, they did it in 2011, and then they followed up with some of the participants in 2015, and they found those, of course, the percentages and people dropping out, but a number of them that had stuck with the activity from the initial 2011 study did find severity of symptoms reduced dramatically because they stuck with the activity piece. What activity looks like, I hate the word exercise. That's why I use activity. It seems a little less committal. But exercise sounds like work. I just want you to move. I want you to be active. If you're dealing with these conditions, it's on you at this point. You can get up and put your feet on this thing, stand on it. You don't have to do a whole big elaborate routine, but you can do some self-care. You've got these tools at home, and I think you should employ them for sure. So that one's in there. And then there was another one I had Lauren drop about red light. If you're using the Aleva Red, if you're using the Lumicure, the BioHeal panel, any of these red light therapies, there's more and more research coming out. Red light, why is it so effective? Well, why is the sun so good for us? Look into that. Don't look about, is red light good for IBS? Is being in the sun good for IBS? How do you feel when you've been in the sun? So what red light does is takes the goodness of the sun, less the harmful UV stuff, and gives our body that benefit. A lot of us don't get the vitamin D exposure, all these things that, that chip away at our immune system and our overall health. So, if you have these technologies and you have IBS, red light is another, phenomenal tool. Strap your Aleva Red around your waist while you're doing your shake. Or if you're more passive and you've got these tools, you set it and forget it. That's the easy thing about red light and why I have such a preference over other non-invasive modalities. So those are a couple of things that I suggest you if you didn't know, now you know. What else here? So JE tells me that she suffers cramping, sudden diarrhea. That's a real common one. I don't know what's worse, being completely constipated or diarrhea. Like, it's the lesser of two evils. I have straight hair. I want curly. We're never happy. My Life Pro vibration plate has helped with my constipation. Thank you, Miss Kim. Even though she has the longest list of conditions ever, constipation, like I've said, it's one of the number one thing. It's a side benefit of anybody that uses a plate in any way, shape, or form. It's really one of the most common things that you remember after a session if it's a problem for you, regardless of what you're dealing with. JE says, yes, sometimes too much heavy activity makes things not feel so good. So intensity, thank you for validating that. I know sometimes if we're having a good day and the energy levels are up, we want to get out there and we want to get things done. We want to live life, but you'll pay for it if you're in tune with those symptoms. So if you've got a plate, if you've got a red light, there's the Swift, in any of these activities that you have at home through Life Pro's suite of products, can be implored. We just got to sometimes be reminded. So I'm just giving you another reason. Is oscillating wave the best for everything is best on oscillating, and the lateral, the pulsation, those are simply, gravy. Primary movement of these vibration machines is oscillating. It mimics the movement of walking. That there's other science out there, but because every machine has oscillating, but not all of them have the lateral or the pulsation. The moves are universal, and if you choose to use some of those other modalities, that's completely fine. For these type of things, it's the churning, that movement of the core that I really enjoy. Lateral, some enjoy for some of these exercises as well. Pulsation is nice, kind of on the immediate area, but I think for some of these positions, you're not going to feel the movement in the torso on its own. Combos might be good as well, but if you are using oscillating, it's the adjustment of the knees or the feet or the hands that reduces or increases the intensity, not the speed or the program. I hope that wasn't a terribly short answer, but I hope that made sense, JE. Teresa is here from North Carolina. Howdy from Texas. And then we have Stephanie. How about IBD? Well, that's what today's session was all about. So if you are just joining us, I went through a little bit of the awareness piece. A lot of this is bringing awareness. Many people walking around on the street or dealing with a deficiency of some sort. But it's not always like, no offense to, but it's not like everyone's like a burn victim where the scars are visual. And I apologize if you're dealing with those conditions. But a lot of times deficiencies, IBS, all kinds of things, if a person isn't wearing an emotion on their face, we don't necessarily always identify with it being a problem. Out of sight, out of mind. And we do that ourselves sometimes. So if you are dealing with these conditions, we know what we should be doing. So do it. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Keep it short, keep it sweet. An ounce of prevention. I'm starting to sound like my mom more every day with my rhetoric. But if you've got these things, start simple. Just get a couple minutes, going before a big meal, after a meal. You know what those triggers are. Complement it with some light activity. And if you are dealing with IBS, it is a gut health thing. There's lots of things that you can look into as far as the products you may have. If you don't have any of Life Pro's products, I talked today very much about a vibration plate. It can be your self-care and your feel-good, and it can also be your fitness. That's why I love it so much. But red light is a really good complement to anything that you're doing now, or a standalone as well if it's specific to the IBS. But red light can also be incorporated in a lot of other areas. And like I say, more and more benefits are being discovered every day. So thank you for joining me. Spread the awareness. If you have friends with IBS and they have a vibration plate and they weren't aware, sometimes with something like IBS, if you are dealing with diarrhea or cramping, you might be afraid to try a machine. And if you talk with a company that doesn't have extensive medical background, sometimes they just don't know. There's not tons of studies out there, and the studies that are out there, you kind of got to know how to find them and ask Google for them if you want to locate them easily. So, movement is good. So, don't think of it as a vibration machine. Is activity good for IBS? Yes. And many of the lessons today about moderation, intensity are universal, whether it's a vibration plate or your Swift. So thank you very much. Use what you have at home. Just get using it consistently. Get off your butt. Get on your machine. If you haven't had a shake today, please do so before the day's over, even if it's just a minimal feel good. Thanks for joining me, guys. If you have any questions after the fact, please drop them in the links, and I'll be sure to answer those later on. Have a good rest of your short week, and I look forward to seeing you guys back here on Monday for our regular Motivational Monday at 4:30 in some way, shape, or form. I don't remember what I'm doing, but I know I'll be here talking. Have a great